Have you ever wondered where you get the energy to play your favorite sport, or do any of your daily activities for that matter? The answer? Food. But how do we get energy from food? A very complicated process that works a little bit like a factory. One of the most important machines in the factory of our bodies is called ATP synthase. ATP synthase is very important because it is the machine that produces the majority of our energy in the form of something called ATP. ATP then powers many of the other processes in our body and allows us to do our favorite activities, such as playing our favorite sport.
ATP synthase has two main components, the FO and F1 domain. The FO domain is a long, ring-like component that stays in place in the inner mitochondrial membrane. The F1 domain is a knob-like structure that faces within the inside of the mitochondria that has the ability to rotate. Overall, ATP synthase looks like a doorknob and moves just like one too, as its FO domain stays in place and the F1 twists in turn to make ATP.
ATP synthase is the fifth and final machine complex in the process of oxidative phosphorylation. This fifth mechanism is responsible for using compounds from outside and inside the inner membrane. ATP synthase has 3 steps to make ATP. The complex holds onto 2 components, a phosphate head and an ADP, called adenosine diphosphate, meaning it has 2 phosphate heads. Then, the complex binds these 2 things together, making ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, meaning 3 phosphate heads. ATP synthase complex then spits them out for the cell to use as energy. Other things that come out of ATP synthase complex are a water molecule and 3 hydrogen ions.
We've learned that ATP powers our cells, and that ATP synthase produces the bulk of our cells' ATP. So when ATP synthase stops working, we've got a problem on our hands. Without ATP, our cells would be unable to undergo any metabolic processes and would die, so they have to get their ATP from somewhere else. This means that other processes that yield ATP, such as glycolysis, must be worked extra hard to ensure our cells have enough energy to survive.
The brain and heart together use more than a quarter of all the energy you produce, so both organs are heavily affected by dysfunction of ATP synthase. This machine performs the last and most important step in the process of making energy, but the electrons that are used to create the force that powers it also make a lot of pit stops on the way. These precursors are very important for developing muscle and protecting your nerves, but they can't be made if the energy highway is all jammed up at the very end. This is why, on top of being tired all the time, people with ATP synthase deficiency can also be quite frail and find it difficult to balance.